Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always it's my continuing open world mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. And I can't say many of us weren't looking forward to today. Here we are back in the well-worn shoes of Artyom, man of action, who keeps going out into the wasteland in a desperate search for the other survivors of the atomic war. So strap on a makeshift gun, throw on your gas masks, and enter the deep, dark territory of the survival shooter known as Metro Exodus. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. Or follow me on Twitter or Twitch, because this week I'll be streaming Crackdown as well as all of these other games. So here's my review for Metro Exodus. Dave Mustaining in a train, humans eating human brains, and the difficulty of choosing between side quests or mains. Graphics are up first. Now, it doesn't matter if you're on the base console, on the Pro consoles, or the PC, Metro Exodus is actually incredible looking, from the imperfection and craggy surfaces of your friends' faces who've had one too many days topside sucking in radiation, from the little tufts of subtle hair sprouting out from the George the Animal Steel humanimals. The game really does leak awesome. It's rare to see something this polished in its presentation, and it easily compares with most first-person shooters on console or PC combined. Even the texture work here shows a sign of someone looking in almost every nook and cranny to make sure that the memory-sparing, low-detail textures don't find their way into the gameplay, and sure enough, for the most part, those don't, though they're not entirely absent. The game's lighting engine also breathes this crusty life into every location, from the green-tinged spore-lace innards of some cavern complex that's virtually a prayer pyre for nuclear weapons, to the light creaking in through the soft clouds and then God rain into the front of your train as you all sit down and discuss the next move in your hopeless journey. I'd have to say it's also the rare gamer who hasn't already seen the effects of water, snow, mud, and blood on the visor of the character in the Metro games, with you consistently wiping it somewhat cleaner with a dirty glove, or trying to repair it by slamming duct tape on it so you don't have to walk through the wafting stench of cannibal farts. All of these additional animations and momentary elements are one part nasty, one part noticeable improvement on most other titles, especially when it comes to atmosphere. This is something the prior games have had, and this is something this game nails. It's also the character design and work that is really fascinating, especially in Exodus. And while maybe not up to spec with the highest detailed faces in some games, Exodus goes for a very high level for everyone, meaning no matter who they are, from random child to one of the men that follows you into the wasteland. They all have detailed expressions, excellent textures, and facial detail. Every buckle, seam, crease, crevice, belt, and strap on a character's clothing is shown in high detail texturing and modeling work, and it has a workmanship look to it that offers that more in the dirt kind of modeling. Also, monster design here continues to be really intriguing. The developers know how to interlace the subtle with the grotesque, and continues the series' unique slant on monsters we may have seen prior, but with their own tonal shift. Seriously, if you want a circus freak, you just need one of these guys and you can close all the other booths. I just really like the design here, from the almost graceful watery swim, the mouth with armor of the shrimp, to the small tufts of hair I talked about in the humanimals, and the way they move around the game world or look at you and then test your action by throwing a fucking brick at your face. It's those animations and that work that continues to pay off here, and while small elements of pathing and clipping do occur, it's crazy to have 5 or 6 of these suckers on a gantry way in some dark building and realizing that tonight the dinner will be served by eye shine instead of candlelight, and the dinner is gonna be you. There are just all these moments where you're running and gunning and you happen to realize that this is what happens to normal creatures when the surface of the earth gobbles up a ton of nukes, like a Roomba. I think this work on the design continues and passes on into the guns, which are a continued hodgepodge collection of barrels, pipes, stocks, and hacked together main bodies, always slowly falling apart around you. Now, like Red Dead 2, you do have to occasionally clean them, but here the drop-off in stats makes it feel like more of a worthy endeavor than it did in that title, and it becomes an absolute must in the harder difficulties here. Exodus just oozes design, and a design with a methodology of informing the gamer that every location, item, person, and monster exists here together in a world with a past that's brought us to the present that we're experiencing. Sunken boats, homes deep in the mire where locations have flooded, and the occasional frozen deck chair build this atmosphere that's a combination of both the outright and the subtle. And while all those are simply outstanding, I do have a couple complaints. Occasionally enemies would get stuck while pathing towards me, regardless of difficulty. It wasn't all the time, but it was sometimes, and it was noticeable while I picked them off. Also, there's some Z-fighting at times, or something that closely resembles that on some textures shimmering in the locations. Now, when it comes to performance on the Xbox X is native 4K at 30 FPS. I could find no settings for a 60 FPS performance mode, but aside from 1 or 2 issues with streaming assets, the game holds very well to that FPS. Now, the basic consoles are just 1080p, they also hold up quite well. As for the PC, on a high-end PC with a 2080 Ti, you can turn on the RTX effects, including ray tracing, and while there are a couple glitches here and there, the Exodus developers have already said day one they'll have those patched and prepped to fix. And overall, you do get a more accurate picture with the lighting, But I have to say, those who can't run it probably are not going to feel too unhappy with what they get anyway, because it looks outstanding. Also, there are a ton of graphical options, so there's a nice flexibility there if you do have some issues with frame rate. Lastly, one huge caveat for me, no Fov Slider. While this is most likely a product of wanting a particular presentation as well as performance, whenever it's missing, it's the first thing I notice. Overall, Exodus has a couple rough points. In particular, I wasn't in love with the lighting in the desert, RTX on or off. But the atmosphere is second to none. The design, the particle effects, the lighting, the animation, and the overall feel of the world is spot on. And at times, Exodus is one of the best looking PC games out there. Sound, music, and voice.
Inside there are just those, humanimal mutants, or so it seems. See that gas station? It's a bandit hideout. They ambush the fanatics.
And you know what? In these three, let's do music first. So one thing that Metro has going for it is the full mindset that the world is the star here, meaning that many of the times the most busy of the moments aren't going to have a ton of music. It's a rare, subtle flow and ebb of discordant synths in the background, with almost no real lead or specific pattern that can be discerned without listening for a great deal of time. Think of a game where almost all the music is what you would hear in a tense horror film as someone's searching a house, and then flip it on its side, leap out and find the saddest keyboard player ever, and have them lean on the keys for an hour, and that's pretty much what you get here. During battles, the occasional string section does build up, but it never really interferes with the sound in the game, and in many places and at many times, a lot of players probably won't even notice it's there. What that means is it's almost unnoticeable until a sharp stinger or a soft musical interlude happens, or when you meet a new character. This allows for a great deal of diegetic music, like sitting and strumming the guitars with others in the train or outside, or having music piped in from somewhere. I did like it, but it's not at all the typical soundtrack that you might expect. Voice. So this is well done with a heavy use of accented Russian and English and a slang-heavy approach. They do a very good job with the script, allowing the actors some flexibility in their delivery and deference to the actual time needed. What that means is you rarely get that moment of push, push, push that you get in some games, where the dichotomy of narratives driving you with a stay safe attitude or somehow smashed headlong into a go out there without your mask on kind of urgency. Instead, here, urgency is dictated more in the overall situation, and that's handled with nuance, though there are some missteps occasionally. Foreshadowing of future events is done well by the actors, and there's almost an extraordinary amount of organic storytelling in the game, delivered through vocals. And this is something that the past Metro games have handled, but here it's a bit expanded. Discussion, singing, finding out about characters, discovering organic information about mission objectives. While characters do repeat over time, it's all handled with a deft focus at making the world feel closer to an RPG than a bog-standard FPS. Overall, excellent. And of course, that brings us to sound. This is really well done, especially the directional sound, which does have Atmos support. Hearing the far-off reports of a small group of survivors fending themselves off in a slowly failing building is terrifically nuanced, and the ability to home in on them is appreciated, even if you sit back to see how it all goes and watch them die. Additionally, a good amount of work is done handling special effects like sound occlusion, reverb, and echo, though to me, I did feel that it was a tad overdone, especially inside some buildings and the train cab itself. Though that effect in particular did dull down to a tiny reverb and tonal shift when I was in smaller locations, it was a bit noticeable there. Also, there were some oddities with the main character's footsteps, sounding very short in their pacing, like he was tap dancing around, especially when sidestepping. It's a small quibble, but it was noticeable. Now, when it comes to the guns, most sound great, and while not audibly at the high level of a normal weapon, the reports are excellent. They're full-bodied samples with the rattle and clank of an AK-47 going through its full complete cycle, far different than the 3-load tri-shot shotgun's unique firing report. There is also variations within those samples leading to natural sonics during all the gameplay, and far off the guns lose that shorter element of the sound wave and leave you with this dull report that elicits a feeling of distance and a little bit of mystery. Where Metro seems to shine is its environmental audio though, the wind whipping through a poorly constructed section of a building or some creature far off in the distance mewling, and I'm pretty sure if I could understand that creature it'd be saying, "Hey, let's hang out for a bit, you can trust me." If there were any caveats here, it's with Atmos itself. Occasionally, I get an odd audio glitch, like a repeated sound. It occurred for maybe 2 seconds, then went away. It never happened in normal mode, but it was a bit distracting when in Atmos. That brings us to gameplay and a bit about the story. You play as Artyom, and after a particular encounter back in your home bunker, as well as some local trouble, you quickly find yourself and your team of barely there's Thomas the Tank engineering through a Russian landscape, exploring a burgeoning mystery of what happened after the fall of the atomic bombs. One of the things that Exodus does well is it takes its time presenting the story, and sure, this isn't magically rare in games, but here in Exodus, it interlaces the deeper storytelling moments both directly and diegetically, with stunning moments of main and side character dialogue being delivered. Now, you may think this could get boring, and I'm sure it could, but there are 3 reasons I think this slower pace works in Metro Exodus. Number 1, the voice acting is excellent. Number 2, the characters consistently interact and move about the scene, rarely relegated down to human-shaped animated set pieces that we've seen in so many other games. And the third is that the pacing of the story fits the game and all of the animations and even the missions themselves. If the cutscenes were flashes in the pan, they wouldn't fit right with Exodus's creepier, slower survival vibe. And make no mistake, sure, this is a shooter, but it's a survival shooter. And from wiping down a visor to replacing a gas mask in the middle of battle to patching it the first time some feral cross between that little kid in the original Road Warriors movie and a dingo smashes a 3-inch hole in it, there's a tangible feeling of completeness in all that presentation. Even if it was the 20th time I had a wrestling match with one of the various mutants, it didn't matter. They were still as goddamn creepy as I expected on the first try. And then I returned home and everybody was actually interested in seeing me and not sending me out to the very next mission. Now, as a game, this is a survival shooter, much of it, and you'll be searching for crafting items, making weapons, ammo, improvised explosives, and the like. And you can do that as much in the field as you want, though there are a couple things that you can't do and have to go back to crafting tables to actually complete. You still have the pneumatic gun, which you can also upgrade, but the rest of the guns can be traded out or broken down for parts right there as you're moving through a location. Of course, what would a survival shooter be if you didn't have a little gunplay mixed into a little stealth? First, when it comes to going in loud, the weapons in the gunplay are phenomenal. Recoil, despite my earlier worries when I saw some of the trailers, seems to be handled very well here, offering a distinct translational difference between the bucking of a one-handed slug thrower and a submachine gun that's been pieced together by some two-handed monstrosity of old motorbike parts, spare screws, and nuts you found in your family's junk drawer. The best part of this, though, is that each handles in its own unique way, and with every up or down grade, you can feel the actual change physically, and quite easily. But stealth holds its own here as well, and thankfully so. When you go about Casper the Ghost in a series of man-eating bandits, you absolutely get that ability to knock them out or kill enemies as you sneak up to them, and it feels very robust. The game also uses the Adrenal AI system, which means enemies off guard are easier to take down, but when they locate you or find a friend who has an extra orifice where their neck should be, they become a bit harder to take down. This means it's not just the same more alert status that we see in some shooters. Also, the game's day and night cycle means that daytime plays out like a Desperate Housewives no makeup edition, filled to the brim with monsters speaking gibberish as they proceed to murder you. Or nighttime, where the bandits are snug in their beds and the monsters come out to play. So you can decide, take on the humans with their weapons and their flanking and love for explosives, or go down and dirty al naturel and try to sneak through the world's largest haunted house. Both have their risks, but both have very tangible rewards. Regardless of how you get around the world, as you explore each hub location, new missions are going to be given to you, with most of them having some kind of artistic or narrative connection back, meaning more people on your slowly traveling caravan of doom or some other addition. Sometimes you'll do small jobs for those on the train. Other times you can just say, fuck it, and stick to the main mission. Each location offers a unique challenge. The claustrophobic dungeon-like locations are usually filled with nighttime creatures that can pounce on you if you don't take them out or burn them with your always discharging flashlight. Or the desert area with its wide open offering, which is a very nice long vista of the evil creatures that can also see you and are sprinting towards you. To the more natural last locations that offer a refreshing change of pace to the series. What I liked so much in Metro was the ability to lock down how I wanted to interact with the world. The side missions always felt connected, so most of them I wanted to do. Stretching out my time here or there on one hand let me see more of the game world, but then also really put a strain on my resources. While doing the main missions always resulted in this excellent pushing of the story itself and got me into the game more and gave me some more data, but it always left me wondering, what if I got that kid's teddy bear for him right before we left? Now, the difficulty level in the game allows you to choose between Reader, Easy, Normal, Hardcore, and Ranger, with Ranger only choosable right from the start. And with each step up, resources are less and less prevalent, creatures are smarter and harder to kill, and HUD elements start to disappear. With Ranger mode, repair stations are also minimized. I didn't notice that as much with the other difficulties. These kinds of adjustments in the HUD and the information worked incredibly well because there's so much vocal data that is playing out in the game that you can end up, instead of bouncing from HUD moment to HUD moment and checkpoint to checkpoint, you're actually experiencing the game world. Luckily, even with them on though, Metro keeps handholding mostly at bay. Also, heads up that the adaptive controller and the normal controller are both fully supported here for those who have them, and I ended up playing with both and had no real issues. But that doesn't mean everything's perfect in Mother Russia. First, when using noise-making items, I swear to shit, no matter how far away I threw it, 1 out of maybe 20 times the enemies had turned towards me like, we know it's you. It felt like the friggin' Predator using his helmet to figure out the trajectory of a rock. I'm not sure what was actually going on there. Also, the game does hinge on narrative choices that are a bit long in the tooth when it comes to games. If you think some gantry way is going to collapse, it probably will. Think you'll be captured by somebody? Yeah, probably. Think these guys are untrustworthy? Yeah, most likely. It shows Metro's chops in that it can still tell one hell of an engaging story inside those narrative brackets. But until later, I can't say I was honestly too surprised by anything. Now, when it comes to length, that is really going to depend on difficulty, and if you just do the main plots. Reader's going to get you through pretty quick, with maybe 14 hours if you do a lot of that side content, and if you listen to the main narrative. On hardcore, it's going to take some people ages. Of course, there's always going to be some gamer who was born with a knife in their hand and cut their own umbilical cord off, getting through it faster. But there are going to be some people who spend an incredible amount of time here talking to everybody, getting all the story and reading everything, and that is going to possibly double, if not triple, this number. And of course, that brings us to fun factor. Whether you're going into this as a shooter, as a survivalist, or as a shooter survivalist kind of character, the game is incredible. It really has organic storytelling, excellent gameplay, and field crafting, day-night cycles, and mixtures of main and side missions all combined together to really make the later game surprises matter to me. Metro, quite simply, is an unbroken line from scarcity of supplies and ammunition to plot, something often other titles don't get right. Every action you do, every momentary pause is reminding you that the synergy between low ammo, low supplies, and frequently low health is directly connected to the timeline. For example, when you sleep, the game doesn't just pass time quickly. It shows the world around you revolving and moving, animals hunting, and is an ever-present reminder that while you have mouths to feed, most mouths in this land actually feed on you. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or never touch it again rating system, and on PC, rent gets replaced by deep sale. This is a buy. It is well worth the money. Now, I understand some of you may not like it because it came out on the Epic Store first, and I absolutely get that. But just talking about the game itself for a second, maybe you're going to wait a year to get it, it is still phenomenal. It is incredibly fun to play. The difficulty is well balanced, and despite it having a couple issues here and there, and despite it being held within some narrative brackets, it was overall one hell of a ride. So anyway, that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Make sure to follow me. They're in my description, my Twitter, my Twitch. And as always, I will be streaming on Twitch Mondays and Fridays for sure, usually Thursdays as well, and doing some games this week. Anyway, that's it for me. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.